my lovely friends, it's Margaret, and it's time to nerd out about books. This is my second time recording this wrap-up. We had some mic issues last time, and I was just not gonna put you guys through all of that background noise. September and October, I think, were officially my slump months for 2018, because in October I only read 5 books, and I DNF'd 1 book. Before we get into that, if you like this video, please hit subscribe. I make videos 2 to 3 times a week about books and writing, and I would love to see your lovely face here on a regular basis. So like I said, I read a total of 5 books. I DNF'd 1 book. Of those books, 2 are 5-star books, 1 was a 4-star book, and 2 were 3-star books. And then I read 2 classics and 3 fantasy books in the month of October. Last time I started comparing what I read that month to my TBR from that month, just, you know, to drag myself through the mud and shame myself for not being as good a reader as I think I can be. I am still doing that, but I want to keep a little bit of the suspense, so we'll do that at the end after you know all of the books that I have read. Might as well prolong my shame as long as possible. The first book I finished was Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. I listened to it as an audiobook for Victober, and it was my only Victober pick that I actually read. Whoops. The main character, Agnes Grey, takes a position as a governess to kind of help her family out with some money woes. We follow her through a couple of those positions as she deals with the expectations of the parents and the way those same parents sabotage her in her job. I really liked the little romance that kind of cropped up towards the end. Who's surprised? Margaret liked the romance, but I was pretty ambivalent for the first like 3/4 of the book. I was going in for a gothic romance, guys, and I didn't get much romance until the end, okay? Basically, Agnes was the only likable character for most of the book, and everyone else that she dealt with was basically horrible or stupid, and it was really annoying. However, if you do like descriptions of the English countryside and fascinating character studies, I mean, I hated most of the people in this book, but she did do a really great job of painting these characters and making them feel like real people. So if you like that kind of stuff, this might be the book for you. If you don't need to necessarily enjoy the characters or have fun banter between characters in a book, this would be you might enjoy this book. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I finished was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I reread it in preparation for the release of Muse of Nightmares last month. So Strange the Dreamer is about Laszlo Strange. He is a junior librarian in some city that doesn't matter because we're only there for like 5 seconds, but he is obsessed with this mythical city called Weep, and he knows it used to have a different name, but no one remembers what that name is. It has been wiped from people's memory. But then one day, a delegation shows up from the city, proving that Laszlo's obsession is not so mythical after all. A problem has been looming over the city for centuries, and they need outside help solving it. So Laszlo joins their caravan, willing to do whatever odd jobs that he can do, provided he gets transportation to Weep so he can actually see this city that he has been dreaming of his whole life. I loved this the first time. I loved this time. It has like everything I need for a good story, except the ending, but the ending gets, you know, it's got a sequel. Of course it's gonna have a cliffhanger ending. It's fine. I'm fine. The language is so beautiful and immersive, and the world is rich and fleshed out, and the characters are really dimensional. Like, no one is a true bad guy or good guy. This is definitely like a sit and think about it kind of book. It does take a little bit more, like, it's not a fast-paced plot and not a lot happens. So if you were more into character-driven narratives, you will like this book. If you need a fast-paced plot and witty banter and a lot of action going on, this may not be the best book for you, although I still think you should read it because it's amazing. I gave it 5 stars in case you hadn't guessed. The next book I finished was A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. I love this series so much. This was another reread that I did for Spence's Darker Shade of Read-Alongs, and that was such a fun experience. Kudos, shout out to you, Spence, for doing such a cool read-along. I was so happy to be able to watch those and have an excuse to reread one of my favorite series of all time. This is the 3rd book in the Shades of Magic series. This follows Kel, who is a magician that uses blood magic to slip between the worlds, and all of these worlds are connected by parallel London. You have Grey London, Red London, White London, and Black London. Grey London is our London in about the Regency era. Red London is the London that Kel hails from, and then there's White London, who is kind of like the magic is dying in this world. They were negatively affected when everyone closed off Black London, because Black London, basically magic became a disease and was getting eaten by magic, and so now White London is paying the price for what people did to save the rest of the universe or whatever. I can't really tell you about what happens in the 3rd book, but basically the series starts with Kel being a messenger for the royal family because he's one of the only people that can travel between the different Londons and keep contact, but he's also kind of a smuggler, smuggling contraband artifacts from one London to the other, and that gets him in a little bit of trouble. And that trouble follows him through the rest of the 3 books. This was a nearly perfect conclusion to one of my favorite series. And, like, my only gripe is that I don't have more books in this world yet. She's writing more, but I don't have them yet. Victoria Schwab absolutely delivers in this book. She takes what could have been a very claustrophobic plot and storyline, and she actually makes it go places. I was in awe of how she took something that I thought was the worst it could be, and she was able to make it move and have things actually happen. I thought we had hit rock bottom at the end of the last book, but then she just kind of started digging and found even more crap to put her characters through, which was amazing. This is great if you like elemental magic and realm hopping and angst, like all the angst in this series. It's amazing. Obviously, I gave it 5 stars. The third book that I started but did not finish in October was Dracula by Bram Stoker. I started this as my second read of Victober, and I got part of the way through it, but I just wasn't in the right frame of mind to read it, and I wasn't really all that impressed with it from what I had read, so I just decided that I was gonna read something else. It's about Jonathan Harker, who is like a clerk that travels all the way out to Transylvania to help this Count Dracula dude. I mean, Dracula, we know who Dracula is, but he doesn't know who Dracula is, but he's going out there to help him with these business affairs that he's trying to conduct. This was one that would be really interesting to dissect, but it just had so much minutia, and it was so drawn out between when one thing happened and another thing happened, and I couldn't, guys. Harker figures out pretty quickly that there's something up, and then it takes him forever to figure out what he needs to do. Like, when I stopped listening, because this was an audiobook, when I stopped listening, he still hadn't, like, taken any action, despite the fact that he knew that Dracula was way shady. And so, yeah, I did like seeing some of the more traditional vampire routes, but I really don't think I'll be picking this up again anytime soon. I'm not gonna rate it because I didn't finish it, and I don't really have strong feelings one way or another. It's not like I stopped this book because I hated it, so it gets 1 star. I just wasn't feeling it. From there, though, we went on to finish Muse of Nightmares by Laini Taylor. This is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. You can tell why I didn't read a lot of physical books in October, because they took up most of my reading time, but at the same time, I have no regrets, guys. None whatsoever. Muse of Nightmares picks up directly where Strange the Dreamer left off, and let me tell you something, Laini Taylor takes this book to places. Okay? She takes a world that was already rich and fascinating, and she adds more layers and more mythology, and it was just glorious. She develops the characters even further, and she introduces some new characters that you get invested in and end up rooting for, even though maybe you shouldn't be rooting for them, but you do anyways because they just deserve to be. Such crappy stuff has happened to them, and they deserve to be happy. Considering how things wrapped up, there were 1 or 2 things that I was like, I didn't need that particular plot detail. But as a whole, this book was everything I wanted. I gave it 4 stars, and I did a full series review, which I will link up here if you want more detailed thoughts as to why I like these series. The next book I finished was Clotel by William Wells Brown. This was also an audiobook. It technically is not a Victober pick because the author was born in America and only lived in England for a short time because he was trying to escape the Fugitive Slave Act, but I did want to see what people of color were writing around the same time that the Victorians were alive, so I picked this book. Clotel was written in 1853, and it is a novel based on the rumors that Thomas Jefferson had children with one of his slaves. Those rumors have since been confirmed through DNA testing. The real-life woman's name was Sally Hemings, if you want to look into her and look her up. But in this book, it is a fictional woman named Kerr, and it focuses on her and her 2 daughters right around the time that they are sold off and separated. One of those daughters is the titular Clotel. This was a bit of a mixed bag for me. I appreciated how the narrative tackled slavery, the lens that we got to view it from, because we were viewing it from the lens of a person who had been enslaved for most of his life at the time that he wrote it, who had to escape from the South and had to run for his life and had to worry about being taken back to the masters who had abused him in the first place. It shed a lot of light on the arguments that would go back and forth back then. Sadly, many of those arguments sound very familiar to arguments that we have in this day and age about different issues, especially when it comes to defending like racial injustice. The one thing that really bugged me is I expected more focus on Clotel. It irked me to see how often her particular storyline gave way so that we could focus on more of the male characters' storylines. And so that bugged me a little bit, but at the same time, I really did appreciate the stories that they were telling and the broad view that it gave you. I ended up giving this 3 stars. And that wraps up my reading for October. Like I said, 5 books, it's sad. Now, as I promised, it is time to compare this wrap up to my TBR. I'm gonna read this from the screen, forgive me, but I said I was going to read 13 books this month, and those books were Aquaman Volume 1, Catwoman Soul Stealer, Paper Towns, Strange the Dreamer, Muse of Nightmares, Sea of Monsters, A Conjuring of Light, Wives and Daughters, Agnes Grey, Dracula, For a Muse of Fire, In the Afterlight, and A Court of Mist and Fury. How I thought I was going to get through all of those books in 1 month, I don't know. As you know, the books that I got through were Strange the Dreamer, Muse of Nightmares, Agnes Grey, A Conjuring of Light, and Dracula, technically, even though I DNF'd it. At the time I originally was filming this wrap-up, I was in the middle of Sea of Monsters, so that left me with 7 books to finish from October's TBR. Oops. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that thumbs up. If you want more bookish content from me, you can always find me on Instagram and Twitter. Those are both at the word nerd with a 3 in nerd instead of an E. That is it for now, my friends. I will see you later when we will talk about more wordy, nerdy things. Bye!